What is up, guys? How are you all doing? I'm doing great, thanks for asking, and we're here with a quick video where I'm talking about one thing and one thing only, and that is Battlefield Hardline. Yes sir, the long-awaited game has been finally released, and I've been playing it a ton recently, and I've actually been quite enjoying it. However, in this specific video, we're going to be doing a review, and you know how I do my reviews. It's a full in-depth review, talking about the good stuff, the bad stuff, and everything in between. I'm going to try to be as objective as possible. There are going to be moments where I'm going to be really passionate because something is really stupid, and I don't understand why it's in the game. That's natural. However, let's get into this long-awaited review. First of all, I want to just touch upon what the game is like, just in a broad general sense, so that you understand how it is, how it plays, what it looks like, etc, etc. Basically, it's Battlefield meets Call of Duty. If Battlefield and Call of Duty had a baby, it would be called Hardline, because it looks and feels like Battlefield, but it plays fast-paced action like Call of Duty, so it's kind of like a half-breed, and I think that's a perfect combination. Medal of Honor tried to get this right. I think the first Medal of Honor game, I think it's called Medal of Honor 2010, that was very good, but this game, Hardline, pretty much nailed it in terms of the way it looks, the way it plays, the fast-paced action. I think it's a very, very good balance. And before I get into the multiplayer, I just want to touch upon the single player. A lot of people actually question why I don't do single player reviews. I can talk about that as well separately in a video, but I thought I'll mention it in this one. The single player campaign is actually very cool. It's not that long. I think it's over like 6 hours just about, or like 6-7 hours, so it's a moderate length for a single player campaign, and I feel as though that they tried to reconnect with that Battlefield Bad Company and Battlefield Bad Company 2 characters, because each character in this game, the single player of Hardline, has some sort of personality and unique thing about them, which makes you fall in love with them or hate them, whatever. But they actually tried to make a connection between the characters and the people playing the game, which they haven't done in a long time, well, since Battlefield Bad Company 2, and I really admire that, because there was actual depth to the characters. There was a reason to like them or dislike them. They were interesting, or you follow the story and they actually cared about the characters, more so than what you did in Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. And on top of that is Cops and Robbers theme. The whole thing is Cops and Robbers. I mean, who doesn't like that theme? It's like one of the oldest, most used themes in movies, in books, in video games. It's one of the most fun things you can experience, and it's made by Visceral, so that's just like the icing on the cake. I love the Dead Space franchise. Personally, I'm a fan of it, and Visceral did a great job in that, and I had complete faith in them because I knew they were going to do a good job, and they certainly delivered. Now, there were certain aspects which confused me about a single player. You are a police officer, so technically you should be arresting people. However, you can go around sneaking without actually arresting anyone or shooting anyone, and you can get bonus sneaking points and stuff. So there's multiple ways of playing each level. You can arrest people, you can sneak past them quietly, or you can go in guns blazing. Now, because you are specifically a police officer and you're playing as a cop, it kind of feels weird to have those three strategies. I feel as though there would be one plan and it would be executed to the letter, because you are a police officer, you're supposed to be planned and organized, and you have a certain job to do. So the fact that you can go around shooting people without any repercussion, or you can go around sneaking and not arresting anyone, just doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem realistic. However, the gameplay and the story were really grounded. It was kind of gritty. They kind of tried to make a, again, Bad Company 2-esque style single player with a sprinkling of a very gritty Quentin Tarantino movie type thing with a boys in blue theme to it, and I thought that it worked very well. Like I said, the humor, the characteristics, the personalities, they all shine through, and they really kept you captivated. But anyways, let's get into the multiplayer, because that's what people are looking forward to. And I'm going to start off with a neutral point, and the reason why this point is neutral is because it depends on your own personal opinion. You might like this idea, you might dislike this idea, it's down to you. But that is Levolution. Now, the Levolution has been downscaled since Battlefield 4. They are not as grand, they are not as big or powerful. Sure, there are certain ones that have these big cinematic moments, but they are nothing compared to the Levolution that existed in Battlefield 4. They are on a much smaller scale. So they are micro, however, they are more interactive, and I think that they look cooler personally. But again, that's just down to personal preference. So anyways, what about the negatives? What about the bad things about the game? And let me tell you, there are many, many bad things about this game. And that's where I want to start off. The game isn't perfect. It is basically Battlefield 4, but reskinned, rehashed, because it is still the same engine, it's still the Frostbite engine, so the game still kind of looks the same. There are different textures and different guns here and there, but you do get the general sense that this was a previous build of a Battlefield 4 game. But the only difference is it has a different theme and it has different textures. That's it. I'm personally a huge fan of the engine, but let's face it, it is flawed. And one of the things that is flawed in is the tick rate and the refresh rate of servers. You are still getting killed in like one bullet with an assault rifle, and that should not happen no matter what. Now, some people say that's because the guns kill ultra fast, and that may be true. However, the netcode is still not fixed. You are still dying in one bullet, or you're dying instantly without your health going down to like 50 or 60 or whatever. You're going from 100% health to 0 in an instant, in one bullet. And that could be because of the guns and how powerful they are, but personally I think that's a combination of that reason as well as the netcode being bad. Now, in saying that, the game isn't as bad as Battlefield 4, but it is still problematic, and it's very frustrating when you turn around a corner, you see an enemy, both of you raise your guns and fire at the same time, but you die instantly and he's still on 80% health. It just doesn't feel right, and that's because of the tick rate or the refresh rate of the servers, the netcode being bad, and guns killing ultra quickly. And this leads me on to the next point, the guns. There isn't that much of variety. I mean, in Battlefield 4 you had a ton of weapons to choose from, but in this game there's only a couple in each category. And I feel as though they've downscaled it, and it really doesn't make the game even more fun. I think it makes it more bare bones and kind of limited. I like the idea of having at least 10 weapons in each category so you can choose to play whichever one you want. It just makes the game more varied and more fun and more dynamic, in my opinion. And also, the weapons aren't balanced. I mean, that's something that obviously is going to happen with FPS games, especially AAA titles. The weapons aren't balanced. There are only 2 guns that people use all the time. I think it's the M16 or the M416 or whatever. One on the cop side, one on the robber side, and everyone just keeps using that weapon because there is no reason to use any other. And I say that not because of the weapons being overpowered, but because they are so powerful and the rest are so inferior, there is no reason to use them. And there's a very simple way of fixing this. All you have to do is just make every gun have a unique purpose. Make one of them have extreme accuracy. Make one of them really powerful. Give another more ammunition in the natural standard magazine. Make one of the weapons very maneuverable and lightweight. And all of them are in the same category. So each weapon would have an advantage and a disadvantage. So you have to implement some sort of cost-benefit decision making into using a weapon or choosing not to use a weapon. And each one would feel different. However, they haven't nailed it. I think they missed the mark completely on this, and there's really some fixing to be done. Also, going back to the netcode issue, you are still getting shot around corners. I mean, it's very, very frustrating. I think it's one of the most annoying things apart from the fact of being insta-killed with one bullet from an AR. That's complete bullshit, and I just don't understand how they could not have fixed it. I mean, they say that this game has been in the making and in development for over 2 years. I just don't see it because it doesn't function flawlessly. Of course, nothing is perfect, I get it, but it shouldn't be like this. You shouldn't be getting shot around corners, you shouldn't be dying instantly because of the netcode or refresh rate or whatever, and it should just be functioning. I mean, the core mechanics of an FPS game should just be functioning. That's all I want. I don't want it to be perfect, I don't want it to be the best thing or revolutionary, I just want it to work. And unfortunately, it's still a problem in Battlefield Hardline. And in addition to this, my game is still crashing. Now, I don't know about you guys or what kind of system you're running, but I'm running a new computer, but my game is still crashing, and it's crashing hard, and frequently, especially when I'm trying to record. And that never happened in Battlefield 4, so they've taken a step backwards. I don't understand. I mean, Battlefield 4 crashed a lot as well, especially when it first launched, but this game right now, Hardline, is crashing more often than Battlefield 4 did in its entirety. I mean, even in the beta, this game wasn't crashing this much, but now they've released a full game, it's crashing more and more often, and I don't know why. So there's no problem or issue with the specs or the hardware, because I've been running every game flawlessly, and I've experienced no problems with recording or just playing, but with Battlefield Hardline, the game is crashing way too frequently. Also, I hear on the console people have been experiencing very, very bad issues and problems with the connection, on maintaining connection with the servers. Suddenly losing connection to a server in the middle of a fight or middle of a gun battle is very frustrating, and it's happening more and more often. Maybe not so much on the PC community or the PC side, but definitely on the current gen consoles, on the PS4 and Xbox One, people have been losing connection to servers, and that's just unacceptable. Another point I want to mention is hit detection and hit markers. Now, this is pretty much the exact same as it was in Battlefield 4. Sometimes you're getting too many hit markers, and sometimes you're not getting any at all. It's very, very inconsistent. I mean, when it works, the hit detection is flawless, it is magnificent. However, when it doesn't work, it's extremely problematic, and it's very, very frustrating. If you can imagine putting in an entire magazine in someone and they haven't died, it's very annoying and it's very inconsistent. Sometimes you'll get about 20 hit markers, sometimes you'll get 0. And you can see the character flinching, you can see the blood splatter, but he is still on 100% life, and you've literally got 0 hit markers. And also, another point that's kind of similar to this is the health glitch, where you go into a gunfight and you're trading kills, and you both end up dying. Now again, this is probably a connection issue, a netcode issue, a hit detection issue, or a combination of all of these, as well as the guns killing very, very fast. But whatever the reason is, it's just, again, very frustrating and just completely unacceptable. You should not be expecting this kind of treatment in a AAA title. I mean, they say they've been spending 2 years or more developing this game. I just don't see it. If they had been spending 2 years or maybe even 3 years making this game should actually be functioning. It should be working, and you should definitely not be trading kills. The weird thing about this especially is the fact that you might see an enemy first, you might fire first, but you both die at the same time, and that's insane. I mean, they haven't even noticed you are there, and you're already started shooting at them, they're already at lower health, but they end up killing you at the same time you've killed them, and that just doesn't make sense. The next thing that I don't understand about this game is the boost, like the XP boosts. Now, in Battlefield 4, it was very, very simple. You got 25%, 50%, 100% and 200% boost to XP. All XP. It was very, very straightforward. Now, that I understand that they tried to refine this and tried to change it to make it better. However, I think they shot themselves in the foot because they have overcomplicated this feature way more than necessary. I mean, yes, they wanted to change it, they wanted to make it better, but they could have done it in a much, much easier, more efficient and more effective way. Right now, the XP boosts work like this. You get specific boosts for assistance, elimination, objective or team play, reputation, etc, etc. There's just too many categories. It's just far too complicated, and it's unnecessary. In my opinion, if they wanted to change and refine the XP boost, they should have created 2 clear categories. 1 for gunplay, so getting kills and assisting in kills. That's one type of XP. And 2, it should be team play and objective play, dropping medic bags, dropping ammo bags, and capturing flags. And it would have been very, very simple, and that would have been it. You don't need to overcomplicate it and add in all these different things to confuse people. It's just not necessary. So I think that they completely missed the mark on this one. Another point I have to make about this game is that it is glitched all to hell. I mean, there are certain moments where you are going through things or you are trapped in between invisible things, and the most common one I've seen is the one where you cannot equip a battle pickup. You know, the weapons and equipment and gadgets on the floor that you can use, sometimes you go up to it and you hold the button to pick it up and your character's gun goes away, which means you should equip the new one, but the weapon just doesn't go into your hands and you're just standing there like an idiot with nothing in your hands. So you do it again and then your character equips the battle pickup, which is very weird because it's supposed to be more efficient and more fluent than that, but it just doesn't work. Now I must say it doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen very regularly. And another negative point I have to mention is the helicopters. Now I'm going to get to this later on, but the vehicles I think are great. I think they work very, very well, except the helicopters. And the reason why I say that is because people can jump into a heli and there's literally no way of you taking them out because the engineer doesn't have a rocket launcher. It doesn't have an anti-air gun. You have to pick it up off the ground. And because they're not that common, somebody might have already picked it up before you and they've used it and they've failed. And that means that the person in the helicopter can go around getting multiple kills and there's nothing you can do about it. Sure, you can try to shoot down with your gun, but by the time you do that, you're probably going to get shot by another infantryman or the helicopter is going to see you and destroy you immediately. So I think the helicopters are either overpowered as hell, or you need to give people more battle pickups in terms of anti-air guns, or maybe you can even give the engineer an anti-air weapon so that we can actually take out helicopters, because right now the game is being dominated by helis and that's not fun. It definitely ruins the game for me. I think that's one of the major flaws in the game. Sure, having helicopters and whatnot is fun for transportation, for kills, and it's a great dynamic. However, if you put something into the game that doesn't really have a counter and people can use it to dominate, again, it just takes away from the fun factor. So that's something to bear in mind. And the final issue I have with the game is probably the most frustrating and game-breaking thing in there, apart from the whole netcode and hit detection issues, is the fake reload. Now I don't know if that's the official name for it, but it's a reload glitch basically. So you fire your weapon, you empty a magazine, or you still have bullets in the magazine, whatever, you click reload. Now the animation shows your character reloading the gun. This mainly happens with assault rifles, but you actually see the animation. So you see the character put in a fresh new magazine, clock the gun back, and it's ready to fire. However, on the bottom right of the screen, you still have 0 bullets, or however many bullets you had left in the previous magazine. Even though you've seen the character just reload the gun and he's put in a fresh new magazine, the game doesn't register. Now this is super frustrating, especially if you're playing hardcore, which I play a lot of, because you can't see your HUD, you can't see how many rounds you've got, you can't see how many bullets you have in the magazine. You rely entirely on the animation. Now if that fails you, you've basically got nothing to go off, and it is one of the dumbest fucking things I've ever seen. Because even in normal mode, because you don't look at the bullets in the bottom of the HUD so much, you concentrate on the middle of the screen, which means you look at the animation, the reload animation, and you see it's completed. Hardcore or normal, it doesn't matter. And you then proceed to get into another gunfight, and then you see your character reloading halfway through the gunfight, and you're like, why the fuck is he doing that? I just reloaded the weapon. It's supposed to have a fresh full magazine, but it doesn't because the game didn't register. And that is very annoying. And it has led me to lose multiple gunfights. And let's face it, nobody wants to lose a gunfight, especially when it's not your fault and it's the game screwing you over. So I think that's one of the first things they need to patch. Like I said, it happens mainly with assault rifles. It happens with other weapons as well now and again, but it's more common in assault rifles. And before anybody wants to suggest, oh, it's because you're running or jumping or whatever, no. I've tried this with every type of stance, every type of movement or non-movement, and it's always the same result. So you could be standing, you could be crouching, you could be prone, you could be running, you could be jumping, you could be walking, whatever. So your stance or your character movement doesn't affect it at all. It's just a glitch in the game. Anyways, now that we've got all the bad things out of the way, let's concentrate on the good stuff about the game, the things that I like, the things that work, and the things that function properly. The game itself, as a whole, in its entirety, is much better than Battlefield 4. That's just a fact. Sure, the game might look similar, in fact it might look the same, it might play the same, but it functions better. There are still issues, there are still problems, and the game is glitched to all hell, but it's not as bad as Battlefield 4. I mean, if you can cast your mind back over a year to Battlefield 4's launch, it was terrible. The games weren't functioning in any way, shape or form. However, Hardline has had a much smoother launch, and that's something to be proud of. And I knew it was going to be better than Battlefield 4 because they pushed the launch back 2, maybe 3 times, and that shows that they cared, and they wanted to make the game function better, and they didn't want to repeat the same mistakes from Battlefield 4. The pacing of the game. Now, one of the biggest complaints people had who aren't old school Battlefield players like me, the biggest reason why people didn't want to give Battlefield a chance is because it was much slower paced than COD. Now, most people play Call of Duty, and that's fine. It doesn't matter what game you play. However, me being a traditional Battlefield player, I don't mind. I prefer the old school, slower paced Battlefield games. However, I understand that new players or different types of players might want something a bit faster. And the pacing of this game, I think, is great. It doesn't take away from the Battlefield feeling, but it just slightly improves it and slightly changes it. So I can go back and play Battlefield 3 or Battlefield 1942 or Battlefield 2, and that's great, but this is just a slightly faster paced version. So it's going to attract more people to the game. In fact, because it is a close quarters combat situation, the fast paced action adds to it, and it's very fun. So it's definitely a benefit, not a disadvantage. Especially because this game is based on infantry, I think they absolutely nailed it. And that leads me on to the next point, vehicles. My biggest complaint in Battlefield 4 is vehicles. I mean, they replenish way too quickly, it's very difficult to destroy them, and they completely remove infantry combat. Now, a lot of you might say, well, that's what Battlefield is. It's about helicopters, jets, tanks, and I get it. However, me personally, I've always played in infantry-only servers. Now, I like rolling around in a tank or an APC or a helicopter just as much as the next guy, but I just prefer the infantry side of things. And I feel as though Hardline has got that balance very right. It's pretty much perfect, because vehicles are used not only for transportation transportation, but they are used as a offensive tool and a defensive tool, and it just functions. It doesn't remove from the infantry side of things, it doesn't destroy the infantry combat, it adds a certain dynamic to the game. They're not too hard to destroy, and it just functions well in my opinion. Next we have game modes. Now game modes are very fun. Now you can see that they're going towards the esports side of things, especially with certain game modes, and that's fine by me. Again, that's down to your personal preference. You might like the competitive side of things, you might want to keep it casual, it's up to you. But for me it works and it's not a problem because it doesn't destroy and remove and change the standard gameplay. So you can still continue to play the game the way you want to without being affected in any way whatsoever, unlike Call of Duty. Because Call of Duty tried to move down the competitive route, it changed the game and the maps completely. But with Battlefield Hardline you can still have fun and occasionally dive into those competitive game modes and still enjoy yourself without feeling that you have to play a certain way or do a certain thing. Next is equipment and gadgets. I feel as though Hardline has put more emphasis into equipment and gadgets than Battlefield 4 did. I feel as though that the equipment and gadgets and tools in Battlefield Hardline have more of a place and are used more frequently and are more effective than the ones in Battlefield 4. I personally think each one has its own unique selling point, it has its own functions, they work well, and they definitely add to the game. The only thing I would have a problem with is the tripwire or the tripwire mine or whatever it's called. I think things like that don't belong in Battlefield. This is not Call of Duty. You shouldn't be giving people tools to camp. You shouldn't have things like claymores or tripwire mines and things like that. I think that's bullshit. But apart from that, every other tool and equipment has a great functionality and it really adds to each class and the game overall. Next we have the maps. Now I touched upon this earlier a little bit, but the maps I think are first of all visually stunning. I mean they look great, obviously it's Frostbite free engine, the game always looks great, but the maps that have been designed very well. They're very free flowing, they're fluid, there aren't that many choke points, or even if there are multiple flanking routes, and it just adds to the fast-paced nature of the game, and it works very well. I think the maps have been designed in an excellent way, they've been thought through thoroughly, and they function, more importantly. So I think that the developers have really nailed the maps, and I don't have any complaints in that regard. Next is netcode. Now, even though I did mention earlier that netcode was fucked, just like the hit detection, and it doesn't function that well. However, if you compare it to Battlefield 4, it's much better. It is 1,000 times better. Yeah, sure, you still get shot around corners, you are still trading kills with people, you're still getting insta-killed and one-shotted, you still have that health glitch where you shoot first and you die and the other person has 1% or 2% health. Those things still exist, but it's less frequent than what Battlefield 4 had. In that game, it happened literally every minute, and that was very frustrating. With Battlefield Hardline, however, yes, it does happen, but it's not as frequent and it's not as regular. So I guess that's an improvement. I mean, there's still an issue there, they still need to patch it, they still need to fix it, but it's much better than what it used to be. Servers. Now, I think the servers have been improved greatly. Sure, there are still connection issues, so you may lose connection, especially on the consoles like we discussed earlier. However, the time it takes to load a map and actually join the server have been decreased insanely. It literally takes less than 20 seconds, maybe even 10 seconds to join a server, load into a game and start playing. And that is insane. And this is not affected whether you have a SSD or a HDD. And I think that is magnificent. I think they've really optimized the game very well for the server connections in terms of joining the game. Of course, they might need to patch the maintaining of the server connections, but in terms of joining the game and kind of loading the game, it works very well and it's very fast, and that's a brilliant feature because you don't have to wait. If anybody has played Battlefield 4, you would know that it took a lifetime to connect to a server, join the game, load the game and actually start playing. It took literally minutes. However, with Hardline it takes less than 20 seconds, probably less than 10 seconds. So that is a huge improvement. Also, I would just like to add that the death animations are still funny as hell. Physics for the win. And the final good point I would make about the game is the battle pickups. Even though I said the battle pickups are a little bit glitched and sometimes your character doesn't equip it even though you have selected to use that battle pickup, when you do actually pick it up and manage to get it into your hands, they work great. They really add to the game. I mean, they are very fun and they're very varied. Each has their own benefit and their own use, and they definitely add to the fun factor and very cool. However, they're not overpowered to the sense that it will change the game entirely. It's not going to change the tide of battle, but it is definitely going to add to individual moments and situations within the game. So it's going to be more combat oriented rather than battle oriented. So it will definitely help you out on a situational basis in a gunfight. However, it's not so powerful that it's going to destroy the game completely. I think they've balanced that very well, and the battle pickups are very fun to use, and they definitely add to the game. But anyways, that's pretty much my review. Let me know what you think about the game. Have you bought it? Have you played it? What do you think about my review and the points I made? Would you change anything about the game yourself? Would you add anything to my list? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, leave it a like. If you did not enjoy the video, leave a dislike, and subscribe for more reviews. Anyways, that's pretty much it. I would like to thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. This is Night 474, and I'm out. I'll see you on the battlefield.